Hello, welcome to episode number 41 of the Birth Words podcast. In today's episode, I'll be talking about using agentive birth giver language in times of uncertainty and stress.
Welcome to Birth Words. Words are powerful. What are you doing with yours? In this podcast, birth doula and applied linguistics scholar Sara invites you to be intentional, reflective, and empowering with your language as we come together to honor those who give birth. The work of Birth Words is to elevate the language surrounding pregnancy, birth, and the postpartum period. Nothing in this podcast should be taken as medical advice.
Hi, so before I jump into the content for today's episode, I wanted to let you know some fun things that are going on in Birth Words recently. At the beginning of last month, I had the first in-person, in-depth workshop for doulas on Birth Words, and we, for 8 hours, met and talked and learned and interacted and thought and reflected about the role that language plays as we support our clients through pregnancy, birth, and the postpartum period. It was a fabulous time, and I'm looking forward to bringing this to a national and international audience over the next few months. So by August of this year, you can expect to find at birthwords.com/classes an online version of this in-depth workshop that you can work through at your own pace if you were anywhere else in the United States or the world. And I'm really excited for you to have access to that content. I'm totally a birth nerd and a word nerd, but I thought it was super fun and enjoyable both to make the content and to go through it. So I hope that you learn a lot and are able to take the things that you learn to improve the care that you give to your clients if you're a birth professional. And you choose to purchase that workshop in August. I will definitely update as things get closer on a specific date and let you know when it's available. If you are an expectant parent, I'm also working on a very similar offering for you, probably a little bit shorter and less comprehensive, but that zeroes in on your experiences through pregnancy, birth, and the postpartum period, and the role that language plays and how you can ensure that your language is reflective, intentional, and empowering to frame birth in a way that will be the most positive and beautiful and empowering experience possible for you. So stay tuned for those announcements as they come out over the next few months. And on Saturday, September 26th of this year, I will be hosting the next of these in-depth full-day workshops. This one's for all birth professionals, and it will be in Lehi, Utah. So if you're anywhere near there and you want to join us, mark your calendars for Saturday, September 26th, and I would love to see you there. You can even register today at birthwords.com/classes and take advantage of the early bird price. And now for today's episode. I don't know if you've noticed, but we're in the midst of a global pandemic, and many of us are preparing to give birth in these uncertain, unpredictable, completely different times than what we've really experienced as a human race for decades. So if you are in the situation where you are preparing to give birth or supporting someone who's preparing to give birth during these uncertain times with the COVID-19 pandemic, then this episode is for you. I want to talk about agentive birth giver language. When I say agentive, I'm thinking of the word agent, the one who makes decisions and makes change. And I'm always super passionate about this topic, that birth givers should always be using language that places themselves as the subject, as the active one making decisions. But especially in these uncertain times when plans are probably not playing out the way you may have anticipated and there's more uncertainty, I feel like it's more important than ever to ensure that those giving birth are in a place where they feel like an agent, a decision maker, making change. I love the quote by Ina May Gaskin in her book, Ina May's Guide to Childbirth, where she says, birth is something that women do, not something that happens to them. The birth-giving woman is the central agent in the ancient drama of life, bringing forth new life. This is one of my all-time favorite quotes. I love how Ina May talks about birth being something that we do and not something that happens to us. And even in these uncertain times of global pandemic, we are nevertheless the central agents in the ancient drama of life bringing forth new life. And that's even more beautiful in times when there's a sense of worry, anxiety, or panic that may be surrounding you or affecting those that you love. Women continue to have this power as life-giving agents. Giving birth continues to place you as the central agent in the ancient drama of life, bringing forth new life. And that life continues to come forth from you. It's so beautiful. One of the most beautiful experiences of this pandemic has been that I was able to attend a birth of a client at home last week. And it was this beautiful, peaceful, tranquil haven in the middle of uncertainty as my client labored to bring forth new life. It was truly beautiful. So let's talk about agentive birth giver language, the agent, the change maker. Linguistically, structurally, we talk about, if you look at the grammar of English, we tend to begin sentences generally with a subject, the one doing the action. So if we say, Hannah went to the store. So Hannah is the subject of the sentence, and the rest went to the store tells us what she did. It's called the predicate. I invite you, as you think about your pregnancy and your birth, to consider who you place in the subjects of your sentences as you speak about pregnancy and birth. Sometimes we can fall into habits of placing other people or even other sensations or feelings, whether emotional or physical, as the agents making choices for us. For instance, I looked back recently at my first birth story that I wrote shortly after my twins were born. And I was interested to see that as I read that story, I talked about how my contractions kept me up, how my contractions sent me to the hospital even, and how nurses broke my water, or how my doctor was the one in the subject position in the sentences as my birth story unfolded. So we talked back in episode 20 about consent, and we talked about a progression from no consent to informed consent, and finally to informed decision making. And so we talked in that episode a bit about what you can do to place yourself in the subject position of your sentences so that when you go back and tell your stories, so that when you're preparing to look forward to tell your story about giving birth, so that when you're telling your story about pregnancy, you naturally place yourself in the position of the subject, the one making the decisions, and give yourself that agentive power. We talked about Informed decision making means knowing what your options are, asking questions, reaching out to your circle of support to find out the opinions of experts, the recommendations of your care provider, and each time you make a decision to use that BRAIN acronym we talked about and think about and discuss the benefits and risks, the alternatives, what your intuition's telling you, and what would happen if you did nothing, if you let nature go on its way. As you take the time to approach each decision point with this acronym and consider those choices beforehand and in the moment, making the choices that make you the agent in the story, the ancient drama of life, bringing forth new life. Of course, if your role isn't giving birth, but if you're a birth professional supporting those who are giving birth, then invite them to put themselves in this place as an informed decision maker, as an agent, as the subject in the sentences that they write their story. And another thing that can be tempting during situations of unease and concern and uncertainty like we're facing right now with the COVID-19 pandemic is to let our emotions be the agents making choices for us. The feelings of fear or anxiety can feel overwhelming and concerning, and sometimes it's tempting to make decisions from a fear-based place or from that anxiety-based place. And I'm not saying that you need to turn away from those emotions or ignore them. We all feel them. When you feel them, work through it, to turn to your circle of support to figure out how to work through that fear or anxiety that you're facing. But importantly, when you're making decisions, separate yourself from those negative feelings or even from overly positive feelings and make decisions from an agentive point of view rather than letting your fear or anxiety be the agents making decisions for you. You are still a life-giving agent engaged in a praiseworthy work. And as you continue to place yourself in that role and remember your central role in the ancient drama of life, bringing forth new life, I think you will find empowerment and power beyond what you can imagine. My heart goes out to all of you at this time. I'm thinking of you. Feel free to reach out to me on social media or on email, birthwordspodcast@gmail.com, if you need somebody to interact with virtually, if you're missing out on that sort of thing. Until next week.
If you're interested in sharing your ideas or experiences on the podcast, go to birthwords.com. If you're liking what you hear, please leave a review on your podcast app. For more resources about language for a better birth, subscribe to the monthly newsletter at birthwords.com and follow Birthwords on Instagram and Facebook.